Welcome to Pablo Torre Finds Out. I am Pablo Torre, and today we're going to find out what this sound is.
I think transparency is critically important in the league. We try never to be a no-comment league, to answer people's questions, to explain as best we can, why we do what we do.
I do want to clarify that you have no idea what I wanted to ask you about.
Facts.
Henry Abbott, thank you for doing this. It's good to see you, man.
Great to see you. How's everything going?
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why I brought you here is because of what we did on this show, live in front of a live streamed, no net audience, which I consider one of the most important developments in the entire story of the Clippers and aspiration, and Steve Ballmer and Kawhi Leonard and Uncle Dennis and Dennis Wong and this whole cast of characters. Because I was invited to give to host a panel of some sort at Sloan, the Sports Analytics Conference. It's its 20th anniversary. And we presented documents and new reporting that no one had ever heard of before or seen. And one of them was a whistleblower complaint. And in that whistleblower complaint, which is filed by not one but two registered whistleblowers with the federal government, they told the SEC in writing, under penalty of perjury, that Aspiration and Steve Ballmer's Clippers were engaged in a cap circumvention scheme for Kawhi Leonard. It says it in the document that Amin Al-Hassan read.
Of the $20 million that Aspiration drew from the escrow account, most was used to pay for carbon credits to satisfy other agreements, either for past agreements with the Clippers or to satisfy agreements with other customers, and to pay for Aspiration's operating costs, and even to pay Clippers forward Kawhi Leonard an incentivized bonus to circumvent the NBA's salary cap, disguised as an organic marketing sponsorship agreement. That's a smoking gun, ladies and gentlemen.
That's emphasis added.
And that document, crucially, was filed with the SEC in March of 2023, like over 2 years before I even started this whole investigation on this show. And so I don't even know what a smoking gun is by the NBA standards. I just know that this is proof, credible proof, that provided a roadmap for the federal government to prosecute the co-founder of Aspiration, Joe Sandberg, and convict him of wire fraud in federal court. The question I want to start with, though, to introduce you and to give a sense of why I wanted to talk to you today, after the reporting we did on Friday on this show, when did you first meet Adam Silver? Do you remember?
Oh, I do remember. I don't know the date. I'm terrible with dates, but I was newish covering the NBA. I think I was running TrueHoop, so that started in 2005, but maybe not yet at ESPN. So it was probably like 2006, 2007. And I knew who he was, obviously. He was the deputy commissioner, and he was very tall, looked a little bit like me.
I wasn't gonna say that that's why we brought you on, but it does help. If you're trying to imagine Adam, just look at Henry and kind of squint a bit.
Yeah, he's taller than me, and well, anyway, let's not get sidetracked on how we look different. but there was there's always another NBA media event, right? And I would go to all the league-wide things, and there was something, I don't remember what it was, that we were in one location in Manhattan, like a group of media and NBA officials, and then we walked down the street to another location for the next part of the deal. I'm sure it was some dumb NBA store thing or Board of Governors meeting or something. And on the walk, he walked over to me and he kind of like tapped me on the shoulder, and he smiled and he was like, "Hey, I just want to say thank you for covering our league." And I'm like, boy, has that vibe changed.
I was gonna say, I don't think NBA Commissioner Adam Silver would ever walk with Henry Abbott, founder of TrueHoop, to a second location now. I think that era is probably long over.
I honestly think, to be totally honest, I think we'd get along fine. Like, I think he's a good guy. I just think he's beholden to people who are bad, and he just has to do a job. He's like any lawyer for any billionaire, right? Like, he just has to do what he has to do.
This is part of what's important for me to communicate to everybody, is that in the coverage that I do on this show of the NBA and now Commissioner Adam Silver, and the coverage that you've been doing, it did not start from a place of, let's take this thing down.
No, man.
So for people who don't know your origin story and like True Hoop, when you say it started in 2005, I just want to do the basic math because that is also crazy, right? Like you were genuinely, you were the original NBA blogger, correct? That's a fair thing to say?
Skeets. J.E. Skeets was out there a little
Oh,
before.
is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
There were
so
technically
Ball
like
don't lie, but Pablo Torre does. Excuse me. Yeah.
yeah. No, respect to the Canadians, I did some. I was trying to sort of Google at that time, how many basketball blogs there were, and I believe TrueHoop was on the topic of basketball, the 12th blog in the world, and a lot of it was just, born out of a deep, deep, abiding love of the game, right? And we're trying to understand this game better.
Yes.
And there was maybe a little bit also of I had been working for magazines and was noticing, like, how annoying it was. Like, I think the first post in TrueHoop history was kind of recapping like NBA head coaches in the preseason had made all these cocky or in some cases humble assessments of like what was going to happen this year, and all the writers just write, oh, the Sonics are going to be good and the Suns are going to be bad, whatever, and then it just turned out completely wrong in a bunch of cases. And so just being a dick, I like recap like what actually happened in the season with like what they said in the preseason, because the point was we were trying to kind of close the gap between how NBA people talk behind the scenes and what the public knows, because it felt to me like there was a very big gap there.
And so that philosophy, which you, again, sort of pioneered in terms of covering basketball on the internet at that point, it brought you inside of ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
What you were doing running NBA coverage for ESPN, the magazine, and .com, which was the job that I had for a while at ESPN. How did your relationship with Adam Silver sort of develop compared to you guys on the sidewalk in that first meeting you just described into now you have a very different sort of more high up on the ladder dynamic?
That's a really interesting question. On the one hand, when I was in that job, like that ESPN meets with the NBA, there's called the monthly. And it looks like when the US would meet the Soviet Union with like the super long table. It doesn't have the two flags, but like it might as well. And I would see Adam during that period, but in fact, I think that, and he was generally supportive. They wanted smart coverage of the league and they wanted deep, passionate coverage. But there was I had one stark black mark on my record, which I was never able to forget, which was I wrote in depth about doping. And I quoted the head of the World Anti-Doping Authority saying that the NBA's process was not good. And like that was like, every board of governors meeting, I would get that thrown in my face. Not by Adam directly, but his like key people. And it was just a warning sign that I didn't go along with the program, I think. And that was a little unsettling.
Well, look, the power dynamic at the board of governors, right? I'm trying to explain to people how the NBA operates in real terms.
They'll have like a mini press conference. I think it's probably on NBA TV, right? And then, I mean, over time, it became clear that everyone in the room would ask like inside the box questions because they want to keep getting invited to this meeting. And then I'd be like, what's the deal with Prokhorov or whatever? And then they'd be like, we'll talk about it in the hallway. And then like in the hallway, they'd be like, what the f?
No, but how the NBA deals with press and how they cultivate that level of relationship such that we will handle this off mic, we'll handle this off camera, talk to us over there, but not in front of everybody. To now just speed forward to the Board of Governors meeting in 2025, I thought of you when I was hearing Adam Silver in response to our reporting say this.
When the podcast came out, it was news to me. I'd frankly never heard of the company Aspiration before, and I'd never heard a whiff of anything around an endorsement deal with Kawhi or anything around engagement with the Los Angeles Clippers. So it was all new to me.
He said, I'd frankly never heard of the company Aspiration before. I'd never heard a whiff of anything around an endorsement deal with Kawhi or anything around engagement with the Los Angeles Clippers. So it was all new to me. And I restate that because it could not be more unambiguous what Adam Silver on September 10th, 2025, after this Board of Governors meeting, is communicating to the public in response to questions. And I think of that because when Adam has to respond to something behind that dais, it means that it's reached a certain level of we can't control this story. And that's the thing I've been thinking about throughout the whole news cycle, which has now been, 6-7 months of our investigation to the Clippers and aspiration, which just took another step on Friday, which is that this is a story, Henry, fundamentally about people that the league cannot control or intimidate. And I mean that to be the former employees at that company. I mean that to mean you. I mean that to mean me more than ever before, because there is something like an independent perspective on what constitutes the public interest and whether the league itself should be the arbiter of what is interesting to said public.
They have it set up pretty well. I think like their information control, is good so that by and large, Joe sports fan, who's consuming from league partners, right, or places where the league's very influential, he's getting a view that like Adam's reputable and honest and just trying to care about basketball as best he can. And, but it's every time that Adam says something completely disingenuous, like in that clip you just played, it's like a 1% ding in his credibility, right? And I feel like we might be reaching a point where those 1% are adding up.
Yeah, I mean, just to then point out, Aspiration, which Adam had never heard of, was the company that had a $300 million plus unprecedented founding sponsorship deal with Steve Ballmer and the Clippers. And these deals have to be approved by Adam Silver's office, the league office. It's in the contract that I obtained. You can see it there according to the actual text. And so at a conference with Front Office Sports, Adam Silver is asked about this, and this is what he says in response.
You have said you hadn't heard of Aspiration before, but a $300 million deal with the team, the team was going to be like a jersey patch sponsor. They had Aspiration on the back of the courtside seats. I think Pablo...
Just to be clear, I'm not sure if I said if I said I never heard of it, I meant in the context of the accusations here. I mean, I certainly was aware of the brand, but I didn't know anything about it.
Got it, yes, because I think...
Like, what does that even mean?
It's like, and I am trying to... I'm trying to be, frankly, like, I've been slow playing a lot of this, if only because I am perpetually trying to figure out, what am I missing here?
Nothing. You're missing nothing.
I need to disclose something. Henry Abbott used to be my editor at ESPN, and you're responsible for a lot of the way that I saw NBA power dynamics.
And Braun got me on Seabass. That's what we're really at the core of our relationship.
Yes. When I investigated the friendship between LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and surfaced the revelation via Gabrielle Union, Dwayne Wade's wife, LeBron is responsible for Dwayne Wade trying Seabass. Braun got me on Seabass.
And Gabrielle Union, who's married to Dwayne Wade, thought he didn't like fish, but Braun ordered for Dwayne Wade when he wasn't there. And Gabrielle's like, I don't think you like Seabass. And then Dwayne's like, Braun got me on Seabass. After which I really genuinely thought, I was like, I think we should interview Gabrielle Union for every single story we do.
Incredible. It's incredible.
The best.
It's incredible.
Yeah, the best.
But all of that is the backdrop for you used to edit me, now you don't. And so I genuinely have not talked to you at any length about this Clippers investigation we've been doing. The question of a smoking gun, right? So this is the phrase that everyone keeps mentioning. And I wonder what you think of that concept and what is the threshold for the NBA to do something.
So in this instance, with the richest owner, okay, well, just to be clear, like anybody who works in Wall Street or with money or in a lot of business industries would say, like, basically, what's going to make them the most money? What's the best for their business? That's the truth, right? Like, you and I are weirdos because we're journalists and we think the truth isn't subject to like how much Steve Ballmer's worth. But like, most people are like, well, frick, do you really want to upset Steve Ballmer, right? So, the NBA is a shocking number of lawyers. Why would that be? It's a sports league, right? They're mostly a marketing body. Why would they have all these lawyers, right? I think the answer is because lawyer is an industry that's responsive to billionaires, basically, right? This is where billionaires get to call the shots. And this has been the MO from hundreds of people who have worked there over the years who I know are just like, this is what happens there. So, to me, like, their decision is we definitely want to keep Steve Ballmer. We don't want to kick him out like Donald Sterling, but we need to punish him enough that we look credible the next time Adam has a difficult question in a press conference like the one you just played. So, like, what's the minimum viable punishment to get them there, right? And I would be very surprised if they're not negotiating that right now.
Yeah, so this is, I think, a really interesting backstage dynamic, which is that the cleanest way to settle all of this is through a settlement, which is to say that Steve Ballmer and the Clippers agree that they should not fight what the NBA's proposed punishment is. And at that point, you don't have further public dispute. You don't have the possibility of litigation. You don't have anything resembling more mess. You have the richest owner in sports saying, uncle. And what his threshold for saying uncle is what Wachtell Lipton, the NBA's preferred quote unquote outside counsel, their quote unquote independent investigator, what they show to him and say, we have you doing this, that, and the other thing.
I had a stack. I don't have that anymore, but I had a stack of like every kind of independent sports investigation I could find from a white glove law firm across sports. And I had this stack because a guy, a lawyer who worked on those at a very prominent law firm, basically told me that they don't do good investigations. They do what the person who pays wants them. They find what they want you to find, right? And I was like, wow, that's wild. Or if there's something that they just can't, in good conscience, eliminate from the report, they bury it in the report.
Yes.
And if you look when Billy Hunter, there was an independent investigation of Billy Hunter's running of the Players Association, and in the executive summary was like enough to cost him his job, but much later was a giant fraud that didn't make the executive summary. And this is why this guy and I ended up having this conversation, because I was like, how is everybody not noticing this one? And so I printed them all out. And in a nutshell, I would invite someone to do a more thorough job than I did, but go about this thing and you're going to find that they always find what the client wants them to find, basically, right? If it's the USTA looking into it, they're going to find that the USTA did an okay job, right? Or if they find something bad, it'll be the kind of bad that a slap on the wrist will suffice for, right? Like, and if they find that Donald Sterling did something really terrible, it's because they already wanted to get rid of Donald Sterling, right? Like, so this whole method, I think what the question here is, can billionaires police billionaires?
That's it.
This is a salary cap system that the only people who want salary cap is the billionaires. Like, the players don't want it, right? Like, I don't think the fans care much. Like, the owners want it so they can save money. It's like, okay, so you guys made rules for you. You 30 people made rules for you 30 people. And then this guy just like completely flipped the bird at those rules. Like, can we have a rules-based system, or are we merely going to defer to the big bully guy with the biggest wallet and just let him do whatever he wants?
Right. And so, and again, it's not even like rules for rules' sake. It's the notion of, are we, as you put it earlier, are we telling people the truth, right? Like, do you want to know what's actually happening? That's the question I have as a journalist for the audience. And then the question for the league is, do you even need to pretend that there is anything resembling integrity to the things you say are cardinally important?
Yeah.
And I hate when I feel like, you know, a Reagan conservative about the rule book or anything resembling like the respectability of sports. But if sports doesn't care about the rules, then what are we even doing anymore, right? Like, the whole reason I fell in love with basketball, the whole reason that I care about the NBA came from this fundamental belief that I was watching something that I could believe. And so if you're not gonna punish this stuff, I'm thinking about this as a fan. You know, I wonder if the NBA knows that part of the reason why this story has taken off is not because, wow, people really want to see the salary cap enforced. It's because fans are thinking to themselves, are we even are we even watching something that I can believe in anymore?
And I feel a little bit like, do you guys, when I say you, I mean Adam Silver and the Billionaires, like, do you guys love this game as much as we do? Because like I would never let it get so messy, right? Like I mean, there's just so many scandals right and left, and like you're a little. I mean, I was new to the league. I was like, oh, you're a little bit of a sucker. For instance, if you think you're gonna like get the story from the press conference, like you have to go meet him in the back hallway. Like the only time, so I'm like, okay, you don't want to be a sucker, right? Well, what about if you're a young NBA point guard and your coach is calling mobsters before the game to tell him like you're gonna sit Damian Lillard? Like you're a sucker for believing we're trying to do this on the up and up, right? Like Adam Silver's created a league where just like the honest, hardworking, I mean, my True Hoop business partner, David Thorpe, like has an unbelievably explosive business advising like some of the best players in the NBA right now. So he's on the phone every day with players. And I'm telling you, Pablo, they work hard, like harder than anybody because they just love this game, right? They're all in. And like we're putting them in this environment where freaking criminals from aspiration are influential in like how things go down or from the mob or from sports gambling or a million other or Epstein, which I've written about a little bit, like
Yes.
there's just so much creepiness around this poor hardworking 22-year-old player. Like let's just make a better, safer world for that guy to do what we all want him to do, which is to just work his ass off and like make this game really beautiful.
Yeah, and just to summarize it as briefly as I can, does cheating matter?
Right.
Does cheating matter? Like again,
Right.
I'm I gave the whole prelude as to like how you came up through this business and how my perspective was formed in this business because like anti-authority is yes, it does not necessarily historically align with people who wonder aloud worried, does cheating matter? Right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but the question is in the horseshoe theory of like why is True Hoop? Why am I left wondering, do the people who run the sport really love the sport, despite being the people who are criticizing over here and you and me the sport? It's because there is this gap. There is this gap between what the league is saying and what is otherwise being reported.
Right.
And
Right.
so in the room when we were doing that episode on Friday with David Sampson and Amin Al-Hassan on stage, oblivious to what we were going to do, there was at least one NBA owner I saw in the audience for the whole thing.
Okay, cool.
There were executives from around the league. There were friends of Adam Silver. There are people who had given Adam Silver various compliments on that same stage earlier that day. And by the way, I do want to play the video of what Adam Silver said on that stage while sitting in a chair underneath which he did not realize there was an envelope with the whistleblower complaint hiding inside.
I think transparency is critically important in the league. I think that, Mike Bass is here, our head of communications. We try never to be a no comment league, to answer people's questions, to explain as best we can, why we do what we do so that even if people disagree with us, there's not some notion of a black box. And
like, oh my God, yeah, no, that's not a good answer.
So
Absolutely
God
not.
bless Mike Bass. So Mike Bass, for those not initiated, the reason Henry is laughing so hard is because Mike Bass is the NBA's top PR guy. The point being that when we're talking to the room, it's a power center, and I am always sort of calibrating. How does one keep a story alive when the larger organism of the sports media, let alone the league itself, which we take, of course, at face value in terms of like, I kind of get a sense of what you're trying to do, which is minimize the footprint of this. But when most of the rest of the media is uninterested because of, by the way, everything we've said so far in terms of how hard it is to navigate these literal meetings, the general network you have to exist in to coexist and cover the league. They don't want to effectively pick fights, and so how do you do it? And so how do you do it? I mean, and so for me, it's like, well, let's make sure that if we're going to do it on stage at a conference, it's a conference that has people in the room who can't, like close their eyes and close their ears. Let's make sure that if there's going to be a document underneath that Amin and David are also going to sit on, it has this double meaning, of is the NBA sitting on evidence?
Yeah, and I also feel so in the wake of Jeffrey Epstein emailing with Brad Karp, the head of Paul Weiss, just an extraordinary amount, and they're like conspiring to help Jeffrey in every which way. In the wake of that, this thing that you're doing, I feel like a real question is, do white glove investigations work to convince the public of anything?
Mm.
And for me, I think the answer is kind of no. Like, I don't even care what Wachtell's going to say. People will, but I'm like, they're going to say whatever's most convenient for the NBA to say, right? I'm sure you spent some time imagining what you think it might say. Like, what's your guess? Like, what are they going to come down?
I have imagined the day
Yep.
when I get an email and, oh my God, here's the PDF that I've been waiting for a year. And it's going to have the Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen, and Katz letterhead. And it's going to have, and I've seen the Sarver report, right? I've seen other examples.
The Pedowitz report.
The Pedowitz report. I know generally that it will convey that they've talked to so many people, it will have seemed. They will establish the tonnage. Here is how many people we spoke to. And they will
the number of documents they reviewed, it's going to blow your mind.
And I am familiar with using that accounting to convey the seriousness of investigation, right? I there but for the grace of God go I, right? Like it's all, I get all of that. But as always, the question becomes, what is the conflict of interest? And I am somebody who, look, yes, I need to, at every possible turn, remind people that I am telling a story that has been conveyed now by 9 former employees at that company.
It's a big number, man.
And it's former employees of the Clippers. It's former employees of the federal government in all of these branches. And again, I'm doing it right now. Look at how many people I interviewed. The difference is I'm not getting paid by the entity that is being investigated fundamentally,
because that would be insane.
And so the question, this is that question of, like, what does the public think? I think on one hand, the public is looking for someone with official looking letterhead to tell them this really happened. Here's the punishment. And I've heard from a number of people in the media, especially, who are like, wake me up when the punishment happens. And I get it, right? Because maybe most generous to me, they have a sense of what I'm trying to convey. And they're just like, look, I'm a sports fan. Is this going to matter at all? That's a mechanism of the punishment to wake me up when that punishment is dropped. But that is, I just could not relate less to the premise of, let the NBA tell me what matters when it comes to what's secretly happening inside the NBA.
Yeah, I think I don't begrudge, probably my neighbors over there don't watch a lot of NBA. And when Adam Silver is on the podium saying, like, oh, Steve Ballmer's a good guy, turns out, like they don't have a lot of time for the NBA, right? Like, they're doing other things. They have their whole lives to lead. And so we focus on the NBA all the time. But, to them, it's like a now and again thing. It's like me with ice skating or something. It's like, I don't know, whatever's happening, right? And I think in general, I like the idea that we would live in a world where the guy in the suit who's reputable behind the microphone, if he declares, like, we're good here, I like the idea that we live in a world where we are good here. And that doesn't mean that'd be perfect. But instead, we've gone, like, full 180, where, to me, like, there's no effort to be decent, right? There's no effort to just generally make things work well. Instead, it's just like, billionaires have gained an absurd amount of power in all facets of our lives, and they just have errand boys in those jobs, and, like, they're basically selling the reputation. I said Adam Silver gained a reputation in the first half of his career, and now it's like for sale to the highest bidder at this point, right? Like, and Donald Sterling didn't make the cut. We'll see. We'll see if Steve Ballmer does. I think he's gonna. One other thing I'll say is, every sports league is under threat from, like, the live golf threat, right? Like, the PGA didn't play ball with the Saudis, and so now they got a whole freaking expensive new critical crisis on their hands, right? The NBA is in a similar, feels the same threats and has to accommodate these threats. They're in this world of private equity and offshore money and monarchs and sovereign wealth funds, and they have to win in that world, or else it could be a real problem. And having Steve Ballmer, the richest owner in sports, like with money that isn't from there, is actually a very important ballast in that.
Absolutely.
And I could see the 29 other. That might be why Mark Cuban's freaking the out over this story. He's just like, can we please just keep Steve? Can we please? We need him.
No, look, the question of who is funding the NBA is kind of the subtext of this entire era we're living in. It brings up your reporting into the Epstein class, which has lots of NBA figures dotting it. It comes to why is Steve Ballmer more necessary than ever at a period of great flux in which the NBA is simultaneously actually trying to expand abroad and build a footprint in Europe and the Middle East and Africa and Asia, right? It's all of that. And it reminds me that as much as I consider, and I met with them, I met with the lead investigators from Wachtell Lipton.
Were you impressed? Like, what was the vibe? Did you think they were on the job?
They're incredibly serious people who with real resumes, with links to civil society, in which they do know exactly what my skepticism would be, and they're aware of it. And so it is not to say that they're like falling asleep and billing the NBA endlessly doing nothing.
Right.
It's not even about them personally. It's about the concept of we're hiring an outside counsel to investigate us, which is a practice in corporate America above and beyond Wachtell Lipton. It's the concept of why do you trust the outside counsel, quote unquote, as opposed to documentation and sourcing and journalism and a whistleblower complaint and bank statements that show that the one co-owner of the Clippers put in money into a default company 9 days before Kawhi Leonard got paid after months and months of delay, right? It's all of that. And the Sloan setting, some stuff you, of course, Henry, can't plan. And so the notion that we were going to do this thing on the chairs that Adam Silver was sitting on, with the possibility maybe that Adam might even be there, only to learn, to your point, that Adam would not be there because he was
the White House.
literally going to meet Donald Trump at the White House for the Save College Sports Roundtable. I'm just like, some of this stuff you just can't script, man. That's Adam Silver now. That's the job that he finds himself incentivized. I'll be generous, incentivized to do.
Yeah.
I bring up all of this to say the Adam Silver that was celebrated, and this is the symmetry, the bookend nature of the Clippers saga, is that Adam enters the league on a white horse, ousting Donald Sterling, who had done something, I mean, frankly, because TMZ published it, that was unsustainable when it came to owning a team in a predominantly black sport. And so the decision for Adam when it came to how do I deal with this, I gave him, and I continue to give him credit for being clear about how unsustainable this is. But also it was kind of an easy call in retrospect. When it comes to just the PR, does the public feel one way, and do I have to respect the public's feeling about this story? So that's the first thing that he does when he gets
Can I just I have a different view of that story for the record. So David Stern was an absolute bully in such a manner that he had 17 assured votes for almost anything he wanted, including Donald Sterling's. And so when David Stern was leaving the league and Adam was replacing him, Adam didn't have a way to get things passed. And so they needed to make Adam tougher, stronger, like a reason. There had to be a reason to listen to him. And so I believe that they before the tapes came out, I think that they were going to kick Donald Sterling out for something. And because he needed to, it's like you walk in the bar and you punch the biggest dude, then everyone's going to listen to the next thing you say, right? And so Sterling was vulnerable for a lot of reasons, and he wasn't going to be loyal to Adam. And so they did a couple of things, arguably also kept the Kings in Sacramento. And to watch Vivek is the biggest homer for Adam you've ever seen. But I think they were just establishing Adam's voting block to assure his stability as a leader, and that the tapes were just a handy way to do that.
The notion of what the commissioner of the NBA needs to get things done. the number 17 does keep coming up if you talk to people around the league. Can you explain the politics of the board of governors when it comes to how do you make big decisions in this club?
Yeah. So we've been asking, can billionaires govern themselves? And the answer is no, right? But Adam has to get things passed. And so there are 30 NBA governors, which is like essentially a synonym for the 30 billionaires who own the teams. And you have to get 17 votes to pass the collective bargaining agreement, which is really the governing document of everything that happens at the NBA. And so if you have 17, you can do almost whatever you want. But if you have 16, you can't do anything.
So if you ask yourself the question, what would rise to the level of Steve Ballmer, for instance, being forced to sell the team, that requires at least 17 owners to say, this is unsustainable. We can't do this. He is grievously offending the very principle that we all agreed on. He's cheating us, and get him the out of here. Nobody is saying that is likely. And I think even the framing of that, because I myself, I have no proscriptive demand for what the punishment should be. On some level, Henry, like that's beyond, I am not somebody who knows the history of all of the NBA's punishments and the schedule that would apportion fairly in this case.
Very hard to do, yeah.
It's like a fake justice system. It's a fake justice system. And so what feels fair? I don't know. I just know that this feels like the most egregious capture convention scandal in public record that I've ever seen. And so what is on the table?
To me, they should kick him out and then kick him out. Let's drop the hammer, and then he gets the expansion team in Seattle, which he would prefer to have anyway. and then in the meantime, you can charge him a fortune, right? You can fine him on the way out, and you can fine him on the way in, and then you get him back in the league, and everyone's happy, and it looks like you were really tough because there'll be a couple of years in between, and everyone will forget, which is what we do.
Wait, no, hold on. I'm again, the vision's blurry. I'm seeing Henry become a little taller, a little. Now you're wearing a suit as I'm squinting, seeing the Adam Silver hiding inside of you.
Yeah, I could do that job for that one. I got this.
I want to be generous also to Adam, right? Because I don't think it's easy to do that job and service 30 different billionaire owners and their associates and have to be beholden to corporate money that is currently in immense flux because of the state of the U.S. economy. And also, he's following in the footsteps of a guy who has looked with every passing week like a more appropriate leader for this time, which is his mentor and former boss, David Stern. And I wonder if the Stern thing, right? The question of like, what would David Stern do? Is that even the right question to ask here? How is Adam, how is he, when it comes to his regime, how is he handling this in a way that feels like a choice as opposed to something that is just the natural gravity of what you have to do when you do this job?
I think David was more of like a wartime consigliere and Adam was more of a peacetime consigliere. So they have these stylistic differences, which we're feeling because I think it's kind of wartime for the NBA now. And he might not be the right temperament to make some of these problems go away faster. He's kind of a negotiator and a consensus builder, which is great for a lot of things, right? He's the right guy to put together NBA Europe, let's say, but he's not the right guy to like slap around Steve Ballmer, and make this go away. So there's a little bit of that. But I also think the media world is completely different, right? So I'm going to say this in like a crude way, but like Michael Jordan was always an asshole, right? Like all sorts of, you just, to people who knew him well, ask Scottie Pippen, ask anyone who didn't want their wife or girlfriend to be hit on, right? Et cetera. Like Michael Jordan was like kind of a handful, but in David Stern's era, they packaged him up as like, he always wore a suit everywhere. He smiled when they paid him to smile. Like he did like, they convincingly told us he was like the greatest guy and it worked. And so it was a fraud. But to make that fraud happen, David Stern only had to call like 3 people, like the NBC producers, whatever. It's very manageable.
Right.
Now, if Michael Jordan I mean, LeBron is, I would say, all in all, like a nicer guy, like a more marketable guy. But he came during the digital age. And so, like, LeBron's been a villain almost the whole time because there aren't, like, Adam doesn't have enough time to call enough people because, like, the people who make LeBron's reputation number in the thousands, right? And include both of us and a bunch of others. And, like, you can't make the fraud, right? It's just like hard
Right.
to do.
Well, it's also the parallel of like when David Stern was coming up, he was also trying to sell the league in a way it had never been sold before.
Right.
And so the whole notion of like, we got to have McDonald's as our partner for
Right.
Michael Jordan and us, like, and that will confer a mainstream welcome us into your living room kind of comfort with a black
Yeah.
league. Like that was so immensely important to the cultural evolution of the league. It's why the dress code is implemented for reasons that are fraught and fucked up in many key ways. But the logic was we need to sell ourselves to mainstream America, quote unquote. And now what we're seeing is, it's not. You're right. It's not just we gotta pick Nike and McDonald's and Team USA. It's we now have the opportunity to draw money from FTX and put it on the Miami Heat arena, crypto.com and put it on what used to be Staples Center. Let's get, to go on and on down the list, let's get any number of fraudsters, including Joe Sandberg, co-founder of Aspiration, to be on the jersey of our teams. It's the real estate question. There are ever more buyers now interested in using what had been carefully crafted to now launder their own images. And that's the part that I think Adam is not handling especially well, is you're selling integrity that had been built up over time because you need to grow a league that has grown beyond anyone's wildest imaginations.
And when businesses are newer, they tend to have a higher holy calling, right? There's a mission. In women's sports right now, like my daughter works in the NWSL, and like part of the thing they want to do is win games and make money, but part of the thing is exist, right? They are just fighting to like make sure this thing is real. And that's like on that mission, everyone's so excited with every win, right? So a McDonald's deal for the NWSL is a triumph for everyone, right? David did that. He made the NBA. He said in his victory tour when he was retiring that basically like everybody said that Americans would never support a black league, and like basically he showed them.
Yes.
Right. So he did it. It became part of the firmament of America. It became this billion-dollar business that's on everybody's TV, every screen. And so what's the mission now? Right. And this is where I feel like it's a little fuzzy. But I don't know, but FTX, sure, okay, they got a big checkbook. They can be part of the mission. Like, helps nothing, does nothing for basketball. It just means these people, everyone involved in the NBA would do the same work if they got half, right? Like, the league would be exactly the same. The billionaires would also get half, right? But like, that's we did the FTX deal, so now we have twice as much money and we split it. Like that's where we are. It didn't get any different or better for fans. It just brought in all these people with dirty money, right? Like dirty money's the growth area.
Yeah, where is the money coming from?
Yeah.
And what does that require, right? What does it require? It requires something that I think, this is where I think it's fair to criticize the steward of a game that I could not be, despite all of it, a bigger fan of. It's, are you doing due diligence? Are you actually, they're very good at gatekeeping so many aspects of the game, except for who gets to be in business with it.
Yeah.
And so this brings me back to just like, how do I feel about what the NBA's investigation is at this moment? Like, what's the state of the union? It's entirely possible that they are so deeply resentful of this conversation because they have the whole joint cased out. Sure, maybe you guys are actually finding stuff that I have never even heard of. And maybe there is some part of them that is considering even acting on that. The question I have is the incentive structure. And my cynicism is informed by the history of past investigations and established institutional incentives and the way in which the people who are levers on accountability are in general disinterested in applying pressure. And that's where I'm like, yeah, excuse me for being pessimistic about integrity.
Yeah, this is like the George Mitchell report into baseball. It's like, somebody has to be able to take the mic and say, hey, well, this is what happened here, right? Like in this case, I'm not sure we have that person other than you. I think that's kind of where I am is like Pablo will tell me if the report is good or not. And I'll believe that, right? And like what a up. How how much the league has to like erode their credibility to get to the point where like not anyone in the league can take the mic and tell us what happened.
It's one of those things also where like I am on some level benefiting as a guy with a niche from that lonely role of like I'll be the guy who's gonna do the due diligence and tell people about it as often as I can. But very honestly, this entire process for 7 months now, I've been hoping that people will join me.
I know. I feel that all the time.
It's just like
what are
I'm
you
like,
doing all day?
Guys, I've been like leaving time in between episodes. I'm giving people leads. I'm showing that you can say this in public and they're not gonna. I've gotten 0 factual corrections. I've gotten 0 lawsuits. I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. I'm just saying you all can like talk about this and even report on this too. And there are some
people have full-time jobs just covering the Clippers.
the beat writers. I mean, look, and there are some exceptions, and you are one of them. By the way, I want to shout out Mike Vorkunov at The Athletic and Joe Varden that have done some reporting on this. But man, it's just like, thank you for doing me the favor of establishing a niche that I'm actually not asking for. Instead, I'm on a podcast with Bizarro Adam Silver, my old editor, and that's about all I got.
Sorry, man. Sorry, we can't do better.
So I'm watching the news right now, and I'm watching a presidential administration, this at the most macro level, even beyond just Balmer. I'm watching this administration make deals with crypto companies, with prediction markets, with gambling operators, with the Epstein class, with sovereign wealth funds, with Silicon Valley, with any number of TBD alleged frauds. And I'm watching the NBA, my favorite sport that I grew up loving in so painfully sincere ways. I'm watching this league do the same sorts of deals. Like literally turning to those same sources of money at a time of economic uncertainty, effectively cashing in the credibility and integrity they built via a fundamental policing of the product. They're cashing it in now in ways that remind me of this nightmare that I'm observing writ large in our country.
Amen, brother.
And the question, as always, as I seem to conclude at the end of so many of our episodes here, is this is a story about a social network. This is a story about a group of people who are being asked questions about what happens behind closed doors. And the follow-up question that I think any journalist, any member of the paying public when it comes to the NBA, the question we should all be asking ourselves is, who do you trust to tell you the truth? And I dare say that it's probably a group project that's required at this point.
For sure.
But I
100%.
might not trust the people who are actively trying to cover up the things, allegedly, that are being investigated.
And not all bald guys with glasses are telling the same story here.
Henry Abbott, hashtag not all bald guys. A movement that I figured we would get to at some point. Thank you so much for doing this, man. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Pablo. Anytime.
This has been Pablo Torre Finds Out, a Meadowlark Media production. And I'll talk to you next time.